Now, I'm really excited to turn the floor over to our guests. First off, we have Judy Choi, who's the Executive Director and CAO of Investment Management and Alternatives at Morgan Stanley. And she's going to be joined in conversation with Power to Fly's own amazing co-founder and president, Catherine Zaleski. I'm really, really excited to listen in on this chat, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you two. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. That was a fantastic introduction. I like it when amazing is put in my my intro. Good job, Meg. Wonderful. So, Judy, we didn't do much of an intro for you when Meg was coming in here, and you have a very esteemed bio, 22 and a half years at Morgan Stanley, grew up here in New York City, where we're both at. I just learned that you went to the most prestigious public high school around when I was a kid. Still is the most prestigious high school, but I just remember my mother always telling me to work hard to get into Bronx Science. And then you ended up at Morgan Stanley after going through graduate school and obviously college before that. But tell us a little bit more about your journey in the last 22 and a half years at Morgan Stanley. That's a very strong tenure.
Yeah, and it's great to be here, Catherine. I have to admit, I didn't plan for this to happen. I'm the first person to say that I was supposed to be a neurosurgeon by now. I was pre-med in undergrad, had sort of seen what was happening during the internet boom days, and sort of figured, oh, let me take a little bit of a break and go work in finance for a couple of years, and then I'll go to med school. And so I actually, even took the MCATs twice, sat down to do my applications, and then found I hesitated and decided, you know what, maybe not the best idea to embark on a 13-year-long path to being a neurosurgeon if I was going to hesitate with my med school application. So here I am, 22 years later, still at Morgan Stanley, and unfortunately, having a great time.
It's very meta, like to, from the neuro, hesitating brain, everything. So, that's great. And then, but you started out as an analyst.
Even more junior than that. I mean, I sort of came in to a brand new group that was within investment banking, and have been formed by bankers to figure out what this whole technology thing was. And I feel like I'm really dating myself. I'm 26 in my head, but obviously a little bit older, evidently. But it was a group that decided they were purely going to focus on exploring various technologies for the benefit of investment banking as a business. And so, gosh, I don't know how many of your viewers actually remember the Palm Pilot. I don't know if you remember the Palm Pilot, but things like that, right? Like this whole notion of PDAs when they first came out, thinking about, well, how can we migrate from just purely kind of a desktop-based experience to something that's actually mobile? The whole BlackBerry when it first came out, finding ways to template in investment banking, especially in financial services, broadly speaking, there are a lot of pitch books and sort of PowerPoint decks that are created over and over and over again. And so, are there ways to automate that? Is there a way to efficiently or more efficiently deliver information to our bankers and as they're on the road and sort of working with clients, et cetera? And so there was literally a group of about 30 people that got sucked out of doing their day jobs, which was being investment bankers, and sort of tasked to figure out this whole technology thing for the entirety of the division. And so somehow I got in there and again sort of figured, I'll just try this and then see how it goes, and then sort of moved from there. I mean, I will say, I'm incredibly fortunate and have had so many wonderful experiences at Morgan Stanley, and in some respects, I consider myself almost a poster child of mobility at the firm, just given in the 22 years I've had the opportunity to spend a good amount of time within investment banking, moved into firm management. I was in technology as the COO of one of the divisions there, and then ultimately now in private equity and private credit within asset management. And so I sort of feel like I've seen so many different parts of the firm, which I realize not many people have the privilege to do.
There's how many, there's tens of thousands of people at the firm, right? So it's
70,000 plus, yeah. And counting.
70,000 plus. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So now that you're an executive director, CAO, what's your day-to-day like?
It's fundamentally, or maybe simply put, it's running a business. There's so many complexities. I mean, it's not just our organization. We just happen to be a very large, global, complex financial services institution. But with any business, as it continues to grow and scale, obviously it's hard for a single individual to really truly be connected to every single thing that's going on across every single aspect of the business. So the same way that you have, let's say, functional group heads that that lead certain business lines, you also have CAOs, chief administrative officers, or chief operating officers, sometimes chief of staff. I think that the terms are often used kind of interchangeably, but individuals who at the end of the day are thinking about how do they run an organization as efficiently and as effectively as possible, and pretty much deal with anything and everything that has to do with the business. And so I get pulled into 100 different directions, during any given week, and it could be everything from people issues to finance issues, programs, new projects, strategic situations, risk type of situations. I mean, you name it, I pretty much get pulled into it. It doesn't mean that I'm the expert in any one of these. It just means that I have to understand what the problem is, to get the right people involved. Sometimes I will be the expert in terms of being the one that actually, works to address these things and really owns a given initiative or a program. But very often it's in partnership with other individuals who are the experts, frankly, and sometimes that requires engagement with third-party consultants as well. But ultimately, it's addressing whatever needs to get done. That could be fixing a problem, that could be implementing a new solution, that could be introducing new programs again and products for the platform. And so, I often say it's the best thing about my job and the worst thing about my job that I'm pulled into so many different, directions and get to work with a lot of different teams. But, frankly, it's, I think, incredibly suited for someone like myself who really does enjoy the breadth of what it is that I do. I just know that I'm not a specialist, and that's kind of, I'm pretty good with that. That's actually what makes my job a lot of fun.
Yeah. It does sound like a lot. Sounds like you're getting some messages right now, hopefully not problems. That gentle chime. I'm trying to work on this myself personally, is not react to problems all day, but to stay in the 90% non-urgent but important zone.
Yeah.
I can be working on things a couple weeks out. Do you have any advice on that?
I mean, I feel like I've tried everything. I wish I could claim that I've cracked that nut. But in an organization where everything is a priority for the respective individuals that it's affecting, it's tough. And I think that's part of what comes with experience, is figuring out, well, how do you prioritize? There's just no way that you can get everything done all at once. I mean, that much I've learned over the years to just accept. I hated it when I realized I can't do 20 hours a day, every day, indefinitely. Like I just physically can't do it, nor do I frankly want to from a quality of life point of view. And certainly, if nothing else, COVID has given me a lot of time to reflect on life and what's important and what's not, and hopefully do a better job of prioritizing. But yeah, you just have to figure it out. And there's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes some things are more pressing than others, just given sort of the macro or the context in which things are happening. And I do think that just comes with experience, and being okay with it comes from just a bit of trial and error, hopefully a bit of good guidance from individuals that you're working with, and sort of learning as you go.
Yeah, I think of it a little bit like a river keeps flowing, but the ship gets stronger.
Yeah. The only thing that makes me feel, that gives me a little bit of comfort is, days when I'm frazzled and ready to kill someone. I sort of say, you know what, this is not life and death, right? I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not standing here doing surgery on someone's brain, and if I slip, I'm going to potentially mess up their motor skills. Like, it's nothing to that level of seriousness. I mean, it's serious from the standpoint of there are lots of dependencies and clients that are impacted, et cetera. And so I certainly treat it with the gravitas that it, or the gravity that it deserves. It's just no one's going to die, and and so that sometimes helps me ground myself and give myself a reality check.
Yeah, it's always very helpful to put it in that perspective, to say the least. So I want to encourage questions to come in as well. I'm seeing some familiar names in the chat too, so bring them in. Yeah, I mean, we talk a little bit about, you're primarily on the investment side, so you're investing in businesses, you're facilitating credit for people, or debt products is another way of saying it. And you see probably a lot of founders and leaders who are building companies. Is that right? Do you have any sort of advice to them? From after you spent 22 and a half years building your career, a lot of these people are trying to build their careers right now. And what's it like when you're working with them?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could look at it from a couple of different angles. As, let's say, an entrepreneur or a company who is looking for capital. So in situations where, let's say, we're effectively a captive private equity and a private credit shop. And so we have third-party capital. My particular area of the business manages about 35 billion of AUM currently, and of client capital. And we deploy that capital through investments in companies. And that could be through private equity investments, or that could be through debt investments in terms of lending to small and medium-sized businesses. And so as a company that's looking at potentially a capital injection, I mean, as you can imagine, it's a pretty rigorous diligence process. It's about risk and returns. Obviously, it's we could be completely inspired and swept up by the premise and the idea and the solutions that are being presented. But at the end of the day, as investors, we also have to clearly think about the downside. And so it's a pretty extremely thorough diligence process, not only in terms of the operating model, the business model, the leaders, clearly kind of future projections, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And I think for the earlier stage entrepreneurs, potentially, who are looking for more of that sort of, let's say, early series ABC kind of capital injection, perhaps what they, I would imagine, I hope, understand, but perhaps is worth just mentioning, is that, again, the idea and the products that are out there that they have to offer might be super compelling and super interesting, but at the end of the day, we have to be convinced that it could be a going concern, number one, and number two, that it could actually be profitable. And so, there's this process that ends up taking place where, the management says one thing, management team says one thing, we say another. There's a bit of a dance, right? I mean, it's an art, not a science. Anyone who's gone through corporate finance knows that, no matter how many times you discount a cash flow analysis and all the valuation stuff, at the end of the day, it's an art. It's not purely based on science, as much as we like to think so. And so there's an element of that you just have to recognize and sort of lean into, and it's a process. And but I do think at the other end of it that it could be incredibly beneficial. And so, one of the things that one of our private equity strategies do, and this is not meant to be a plug on our platform, so I'll be very, very brief, is really looking for those companies where they are founder-led, but they have a ton of potential, and are looking to partner with these founders and these entrepreneurs who really want a partner that, can really bring institutional sort of knowledge and experience and really help them grow into something that's bigger and frankly something that benefits everyone. It's not just about us as investors. It's obviously about benefiting the founders, the entrepreneurs, the management team, the employees at these companies as well. And so I think who you partner with ultimately makes a big, big difference. And so, that's one thing to think about. On the venture side, thinking about sort of the professionalism and sort of no matter how good your ideas are, that at the end of the day, they have to be something that is as sustainable, as I said, and something that can grow. The other aspect to mention, which just because I've had a number of conversations about this, is as a supplier, potentially as a service provider to Morgan Stanley or to the Morgan Stanleys of the world, let's say, or any large corporation. I think people just need to be prepared that it's a pretty rigorous process to get in the door that they just have to be ready for. The levels of, for technology companies, for example, the levels of security reviews that are required, the onboarding, the financial analysis, making sure that there isn't any sort of financial crimes being conducted. I mean, this is all sort of the intent and the spirit of it is really good. And it's great from a risk management point of view. And once you're in the door, then it makes it so much easier to get repeat business. It's just that initial entree into that corporate environment that sometimes is pretty grueling. And I just think, entrepreneurs just need to be ready for because it's real, and they shouldn't underestimate that journey because I know it's painful.
I went through Morgan Stanley procurement.
Oh gosh.
About
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, I think it was 2018, but it was worth it. But there were personal financial questions too, and all sorts of stuff. So
yeah.
But I mean, it's good to see it in how it actually works. I think there's a lot of myths out there about how financial institutions function, and so when you actually go through it on a personal level, you see how rigorous it is, and so it makes you feel better too when you get to the point where you can start investing with those institutions later on as well. So
absolutely
good mix. Let's talk a little bit about the Next Level Fund. That's a really interesting fund, and maybe explain it a little bit if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a relatively new venture fund that is a joint venture between my particular area within asset management and the Multicultural Innovation Lab, which sits within our different part of the business, more at the corporate level. And so Carla Harris, who I know was on, I guess in previous sessions. Yeah, so she's one of the co-portfolio managers. And it's really a fund that takes what was born through the Multicultural Innovation Lab, which is effectively an incubator program that Morgan Stanley has been running for the better part of 6 years in terms of looking for early stage businesses with diverse founders and folks in the management team. And it's really kind of taking that concept and kicking it up a notch, if you will, hence the name Next Level. And so we are super jazzed about this. It's a venture fund, as I mentioned, that actually has an investor base consisting of other strategic corporates. And so the first set of anchor investors that we have partnering with us are Microsoft, Hearst, and Walmart. And the premise of all of this is, to some extent, there are really fascinating companies that are coming through the innovation lab and sort of get to a certain point where they could look for and frankly receive sort of a Series A plus funding. And so that's not the only mechanism of sourcing opportunities, but certainly that's one big pipeline for us to tap into some really great companies. But the thought is that these companies would get not only a capital injection from this venture fund that consists of not only Morgan Stanley money, but these other corporates, and we're still in the process of getting in the final few institutional LPs, but that the investor, that the corporates themselves would also figure out how do they help these companies actually continue to grow and scale. And so that could mean helping them embed their products or services within their own ecosystem. And so to the extent that there are, certain tech solutions, for example, or where there are companies that require tech solutions, Microsoft, as an example, has been like, okay, well, how do we help them either with their platform, or how do we help get them in the door to Microsoft and really, help them embed themselves into the ecosystem. Similarly, for any consumer-oriented companies, or from a marketing point of view, clearly Hearst is there, Walmart's there. And so the team has made about 6 investments thus far, have a massive pipeline of just really fascinating opportunities, probably more than they can actually execute on. But just really excited with the fantastic companies that are coming through, and certainly the entrepreneurs that are leading these companies, and we hope to see some pretty fantastic success stories in the next year or two's time.
Yeah, I saw the announcement come in, I think in June, and Hearst is one of our investors as well.
Excellent.
Eve Burton, do you know Eve? I think she's on the board, but Hearst has an incubator, and we were, they were a Series A investor, but anyway, they're fantastic because of the brand reach, and you can, if you're depending on what space you're in, you usually can sort of reach that audience as well through them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Microsoft's also a big client of ours too, so not an investor, but someone I highly recommend people get involved with. It's just the range of products and work, and everything from LinkedIn, obviously, to the Teams product. But I think what would be very interesting for this audience, or people who listen to this as a recording, is that the next level fund doesn't have the same requirements that a traditional private equity or venture investment would be, right? Is it smaller check size? Is it less diligence? Can you detail that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, exactly as you mentioned, it's just their earlier stage companies, sort of Series A plus, certainly not the enterprise ready or near enterprise ready companies that some of our growth funds and our larger private equity funds have a tendency to invest in. And so, giving you a sense of, or giving the audience a bit of a sense of check size at sort of the upper end of the spectrum in terms of our mid-market buyout funds, our check sizes could be somewhere in the range of, let's say, 125 million or 100 million on the low end, to potentially upwards of 200 million. Sometimes they're syndicated across other LPs, but a pretty significant capital injection. I would say on the kind of growth capital side, which is sort of one rung down, if you will, in our world, the check sizes could be somewhere between, let's say, 5, if it's pretty small, up to 20, 25. And these are more of these enterprise ready companies that really just need that extra bit of capital injection. But then the next level fund is really focusing on the much earlier stages where, our check sizes on the small end could be about 500. And as large as 2 million. And there's a lot of room, obviously, there. And they're all minority investments. Certainly we might look to lead certain rounds, but for the most part, they're minority. And so it certainly gives us, all of a sudden, the pipe and the funnel just ends up becoming that much wider in terms of the type of companies that we have, the ability to take a look at and potentially to partner with. And to the extent that, again, that Morgan Stanley and all the other corporates could really help in terms of helping these companies get to that next stage. We think it's an incredibly differentiated product that's out there, and again, really builds upon, a pretty strong history of activities that we've had in this space. I know it's become super popular lately, and I feel like every other day there's a new impact fund or a new DEI fund that's launching, but we're trying to really kind of hold true to ourselves, and from the standpoint of, we've been doing this for quite some time. I sort of joke that we're not the Johnny come latelys here, and have built a great pipeline and a great network of entrepreneurs, and that ecosystem, and we're just super excited about it.
I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of the new funds, but I think then there's a bit of I was actually just looking at something. Sally Project, who's a friend of the platform, has spoken with us on here a couple times, and has been a nice partner through the years. Actually, just did an interview about the Series B cliff and that something like less than 1% of, it's like 1 in 10,000, I think it's woman-led businesses make it to the Series B. So
Yeah,
there's like something in the middle there that is very interesting to me.
absolutely.
In the
Absolutely.
A and the B, but that's for another conversation. The other thing I think is really interesting about a place like Morgan Stanley is you can basically be with a business through its entire life cycle. And as someone who's, kissed a million frogs in this space, which means pitching, you go to a lot of funds that are like, that's great, we'll give you this check now, but we expect you to go out and fundraise in the next 16 months, no matter what, because you will have spent our capital to grow this way. And not all businesses work that way, right? So it's a bit of I think that's and obviously, when you're working with a big fund, you're gonna grow with it through the cycle, but it's different. You go from growth stage, IPO, even debt financing. All those stages can be included in a larger institution.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic point. It's we certainly have the scale and the brand name and clearly the infrastructure and the foundations in place to really be much larger. But we as a firm feel, well, there's an incredible role to play in sort of the small mid-market space where we feel we're bringing sort of these outsized resources, right? And again, the ecosystem and the networks essentially of a bulge bracket global investment bank. And I don't think that's something that's as common because it's easy to just say, oh, just get bigger and just, write bigger checks and hopefully have find bigger unicorns, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it requires a different level of focus and discipline to intentionally sort of stay small and really think about the role that we have to play in that particular ecosystem as well.
No, it's good. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that you all were investing in smaller companies as well. So cool. Well, we have 2 minutes and there were some questions too around, but I'm gonna sort of synthesize them a little bit into a question around, what advice would you go back and give yourself at the beginning of your career?
Oh gosh. I think I would say I should have had a better plan. I mean,
yeah, best laid plans.
right. So after I gave up the whole medical school, neurosurgery route, I didn't really have a plan. And so a couple of things. So having a better plan, but I think a part of developing a better plan is surrounding yourself with lots of different people. So when I went to business school, my mind sort of exploded in terms of, and it wasn't the academic aspect. I mean, certainly that was obviously very interesting and important, but it's really the true diversity of the population. So, people might say, oh, whatever, like you went to business school, like how diverse could it be? It's a bunch of finance people and maybe in slightly different companies. But I mean, my particular program, which is, if anyone, a little small shameless plug for the Global Executive Program, which is a joint program between Columbia and London Business School, I think was just the most amazing thing I've done personally in my entire life. I think it was incredibly pivotal. Again, in part because of the program, but mostly because of the population of individuals that I got to be around. And so I was only one of 5 people from a finance background in a class of 72. And the preconceived notions that I went in with in terms of, oh my gosh, I never had a problem in school. I was always a straight A student. Like this is going to be a breeze. It was so humbling to be in this class of entrepreneurs, of people in nonprofit, of individuals that I haven't really come across, or I hadn't really come across throughout my years at Morgan Stanley, and just being completely blown away with their level of innovation and creativity and just dynamism and energy and just brilliance. It was super, super inspiring. And frankly, it is my conversations with all of them that I think really changed my perspective, frankly, on my own life. And certainly I think it's helped me tremendously from a professional point of view as well. And so, part of the reason why I emphasize that is because I wish I kind of had, well, that acted as a catalyst to then a plan for me later on.
Yeah.
I just wish, as anyone would, that I kind of thought about doing that a lot earlier. But you know what? Sometimes the paths we take, we end where we are because of the non-circuitous or the non-sequential, paths that we take. And certainly, at least it was a fun, a fun journey, if nothing else. Perhaps not quite as direct in terms of A to B to C, but nonetheless, a really rewarding one, I will say.
That's great. Yeah. It's the journey. Well, our journey has come to an end. And it is time to give the mic back over to Meg, who is going to kick everybody into the next career fair day. So thank you so much, Judy. This was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you to you both. That was a really, really awesome chat to get to listen in on. Thank you so much, KZ and Judy, for taking time out of your day to spend with us. Very much appreciate it.